terms of documentation, which is very important, especially if someone else needs to read your function or your code, it's very important to add as much as comments and text around what does each function do. All right. Let's take another exercise here. Imagine I have L1 as a list, and I'm saying these are a couple numbers like 5, 8, and let's say 10, and L2 equals, that's another list. We saw what are the lists, what are lists from last time, 3 and 5, and let's say 7. So the goal here is to take 5 plus 3, and I want to know what is the answer of 5 plus 3, 8 plus 5, and 10 plus 7. Just imagine you have this problem to solve. In this case, I need to loop. It's a for loop right away. Then for I in range of what? Len of L1. So now what's, as a reminder, so let me comment this out, and just to make L1, L2 added to the memory. So if I say len of L1, that gets me 3. Len of L2, that's 3, of course. Now, when I say range of len of, well, not len, let's say 3 here, that gets you this list here, which is iterator here. You see it's 0, 1, and 2. So when we do a for loop for I in range len of L1, and then we could say, get me, which in this case, I could say print L1 of I, comma, I could say plus, which is another string. Here, I could say L2 of I, and then here I could say equals my addition, which is the function I defined as L1 of I, plus, comma, L2 of I. And let's see, what do we get? That's what we got here. So in the for loop, we have the for loop runs from 0 up to 3, excluding 3. And that's the range function. It goes up to n, excluding n, which means up to n minus 1. So we have the dimensions of these lists here. It's 3. So we go 0, 1, 2. And now the first iteration of the for loop is going to L of 1 of 0. So we have 5 plus L2 of 0, which is 3, equals the my addition. So when we take two numbers here and push them to the my addition function, it gets just the addition. So I have 5 plus 3 is 8, and what you understand what are those outputs here. All right. You can also get some other inputs. It doesn't necessarily need to be those ones. You could say I can have this function, my addition, and I could say minus 100 and probably 80, and that gets you exactly what you have. Or but you shift basically the list by one number, or by one shift. In this case, you could say for I in range, again, len of, let's talk about L1, len of L1. And then you could say print I want to say L1 of I. And then the last thing I want to do, my addition of L1 of I, and comma, let's say by 5. So in this case, I say, this is the index, which is I equals 0. I goes through 0, 1, 2. The first element in L1 is 5. That's what I get, 5. When you add 5 to 5, you get 10. The second one, the iteration in the iteration of the for loop, I is 1. L1 of 1 is 8. 8 plus 5 is 3. Why 5? Because this is the shift that I added to the function. And lastly, if I have L2, I'm sorry, I2, L1 of 2 is 10, 10 plus 5 is 15 here. All right. So let's take another function or another example. So we said, okay, if I want to do another example here of how do you define another example to create a function. So all you need to do is this. Let's say I'm defining a function that says, say, hi or say hello. So let's say hello, and it takes a name. It doesn't need necessarily, it can't take basically any inputs, any function that you define. So again, this is the doc string, and you could say this is doc string, if you like, doc string, and documentation string, and the input, same thing here. Input is just a name, and output is voiding. All right, so that's only the doc string, but what does this function say? It could be, you could say print inside. There's no output here, but it just prints on the screen, hello, hello, and probably the name, or actually print hello plus name, assuming that hello, is a string and the name is a string. So this function doesn't have any output, so this is incorrect here, unless you want to say return hello. Probably this is a better way to look at it. So let's not do the print here. So we don't need that because we want some output here. And I say, let me run this function. Of course, there's no output here because I did not call the function. But if I say hello and say, you know what, say hello to Sam, and okay, hello Sam, as you see, it's concatenated with no space. But if you do a space here and do it again, you see hello Sam is here, hello Sarah, and you see hello Sarah in here, and so on. So it's pretty much straightforward. Okay, so you could, as I said, I mean, the name here is just a string, and all this function does, it takes one string, which is hello, and concatenate it into the name that the function is getting as an input, and returns the hello plus the name in one string. All right. So another example is the factorial function that I would like to show you. So if I say factorial factorial calculations. So basically here, if I say another function, it's a fact, let's call it fact of n. So it takes a number and returns same thing here. I have this function returns factorial of n. So those who are not familiar with the factorial, so if I have, if I say 4 factorial, that's how people write it. So it's the same like 1 times 2 times 3 times 4. So same thing here. If I say n factorial, it's the same like 1 times 2 times times n. So that's the input. That's the description. Input is just an integer, an integer, an integer. And the output is basically in factorial. Excuse me. All right. So how can we get that? The very first thing we want to do is the following. So if I say R as the result, if you like the result, or the result is 1. And then what I would like to do, while I can start with a while loop, while n larger than 0, because you want to go up to 0, because if you hit the 0, then everything will multiply by 0. It's going to be 0. Then R equals R times n. And what we are going to do, we are going to decrease n by 1. N equals n minus 1. And some people actually here prefer to have n minus equal 1, which means take n. This is just a syntax here where you could see where you could where you you don't have. This is exactly equivalent to what I have here. But some people, especially those who are coming from C++ or Java, probably prefer the other one. But it's just a syntax. And excuse me. And finally, I want to return the R as the factorial. So let's see what can we get in here. So if I run this function and they say factorial of, let's say 3, we know what's the, oops, there is a problem here. Let's see, R equals R times N. Okay. Local variable reference before assigning. Oh, sure. That should be on R, not R. And yeah, sorry about that. Sure. All right. So what I saw here, that's the result. And then I say, okay, the result will be returned as R. You start with 1. And then N, you start with N. So if N is 3, the first time R equal 1 times 3. But then the second time in the while loop, N will become 2 because you are decreasing N by 1. So I have 1 times 3, second times 2, second, third time times 1, because every time N is decreasing by 1. But when you when N becomes 0, then that's how you stop the while loop. Okay, so what if I say, you know what, get me the 5, as you could expect it, it's 1 times 3, 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 times 5 is 120. So we said that n, this function is supposed to get an integer as input. But what if I say it's 5 times 5? Would that shouldn't be, there's no such a factorial of a float. But when I do that, it's still working well, because we did not make sure that n is an integer. How we can check if a number is an integer? Okay, so there are several ways how you can make sure that a number is an integer. So if I say x equal, let's say 5.5, and then you can ask yourself, int of x equals x, and the answer is false. However, if you do 50, if it's a number, whole number, and you try to say, when you convert a number into integer, would it be the same value like the value itself? In this case, it's true. Again, so if I have, let's say 3.99, which is the integer of it, it's going to be 3. And now when you say, is 3 equals like 3.99, the answer is false, which tells you that the number is not an integer. And that's what you see in here. When you do 3, just 3.0 if you like, that's absolutely true. So we can go back here and say, if we are fixing this function, if we say, if int of n not equals, that's how we can say not equal rather than equals. And we said equals in Python means, are you comparing two things? And one single equal means that you are assigning a value to that variable. So if that's the say, if this is not the case, then you could say return this is not an integer. So let's do it again. We are running this function again, and I'm saying factorial of 5.5, what would be the answer? The answer would be, this is not an integer. However, if I say it's just a 5, like that, now it's 120. Same thing with any other number. So when I say, let's say, this number might be too much, but let's give it a try. So 10.12, but if I take factorial of 10, that's the number that we have in here. Don't go too much here. As you see, factorial of 100, it's a very large number. I don't know if this is a realistic number or not, most likely not, but that's what you see in here, which is all the multiplication of all the numbers up to 100. Okay. Okay, so let me look here for a couple questions. I can't take all the questions, but I might look for some other questions. Sure, I appreciate the comment about moving the screen. Keep reminding me. Sometimes it's pushing everything to the bottom. Let me see what can I do in here. Just give me a moment, please. Um, so make it a bit better. So I move that. Can you do, can we do my addition L1 and L2 and get new list as outcome? Very good question. Let me look at that. Again, I'm sorry, I'm selective in the questions, but I will try to cover as much as I can. So the question here was, if I have L1 and L2, I want to add one list, which is the output. So let me go back in here. So we said my addition is that function here, right? So let me create one output here, which is exactly after this cell, which makes sense. So let's do that. Return the sum of two lists as a list. The answer is yes. So let's do that. So we have L1 and L2. Let me do L1 and L2 one more time here. They do not need to be exactly the same, but just for easier way to show everything in one cell. It's right here. So we have L1, L2, and the answer was, what if I want to try to add L1, L2 and add them in one single list? Okay. In this case, I could say for I in range, so let's say len of L1, and that gets you that. Let's call it L as the sum. LS is for the sum to be an empty list. That's how we can create an empty list. And in this case, I could say LS, which is the result, would be of I, the single I, or append if you like, dot append. That's how we append a list to be my addition of L1 of I with L2 of I. And in this case, I believe if you do LS, that gives you exactly those results. So you take 8 plus 5 is 5 plus 3 is 8, 8 plus 5 is 13, and 10 plus 7 is 17. So what did I do here? In line number, let me just put the numbers here. In line number 4, I'm creating an empty list, and then line 5 and 6, it's a loop. I'm looping over L1 and L2. So I'm saying ls, just append, add one more element in ls. And then it's what I'm adding into this list here. It's the result of the function, my addition, that was defined earlier, where I took the element, the ith element from L1 and the ith element of L2. And then when you add those, you just append this list. And finally, you just print what is the result of the two. Okay, good question. Let me look for one more probably question. I don't see any questions here for some reason. No open questions. All right. Okay, so let me continue here. So what if, here's the challenge. Let me do what if I would like to add, excuse me, add a varying number of numbers. So what do I mean by that? So I want a function that first time it adds two numbers. The second, if I run it again, I want to run it when it adds up, let's say 5 numbers. I want the same function to do the same thing. There are at least 2 approaches, and one might be a little bit, better than the other. So if I say I'm defining a new function, def add n, I call it add n because I want to add varying number of numbers. So I could say args here, the arguments here, and then, well, I'm skipping the doc string here, but it doesn't need to be the case. So I could say total equals 0, and then I could say for arg in args, and then I say total equals total plus arg here. So in this case, I added everything into total, and then I could say return total. So if I run this function, now I can test it, add, and I would say probably add nothing here. What do I get? It's just 0. Just, I don't know if that's the case you want to do. You could say, okay, if args is just an empty or nothing in args, then return something else. But if I return 5, it's just 5. If I add 5 and 18, that's 28. If I add 55 here, that's 78. If I add probably minus 100, it's minus 22, and so on. So as you see, the numbers that I'm adding can be anything, can be different. That's one approach. The other approach would be something like that, although it's not convenient. You could say, I am adding a list of X, and then same thing here. You could say total equals 0, and then for X, element in X, uppercase X, then total equals total plus element. So, and finally, you could do return total. That's one way. Now, how we can run this function? Again, as you see, I'm overwriting the function. I call it the same function, the same name, add n. But well, let's do it as add n1, and let's run it. And you could do add n1. That gets you the same. Add n2. And if I say add n2, and then I say this is a list, as you see, this is the difference here. Here I did not say it's a list, but here I can say it's a list. I could say 4 and 5 and 6. As you see, it's going to be 15, and as expected. Now, if I go back and say, you know what, add another 5 here, that should be 20, and so on. So there are at least 2 options here. I would certainly prefer this one because you don't have to put the input or provide the input as a list. It can be any numbers without any restriction. Okay. Well, the last probably example I would like to do here in defining functions is concatenating some text here. So adding a text, concatenating text. I hope I'm not doing misspelling here. All right, so let's do def. I can add words like that, and then same thing, words if you like, and then I could say I can say exactly the same, result equals just an empty string, and then I say for word in words, okay, then res equals res plus word, and plus just one empty space, because you don't want to have anything which is a white space. You know what? Let's keep it off for a moment. And then return res. And when I say, let me call it in the same cell here, add words, as you see, as words in here. And I say, if I have social distancing, let's say saves in quotes, of course, lives. Let's do that. What I'm expecting is just all the words together are concatenated. It's not exactly what I would like to see. I want this message to be quite clear, right? So you can add a space here and look what's going to get, what we are going to get. So you took all these words as separate words and you just add them together. So you see social distancing saves lives. All right, so as you see, there's one little problem here. There's an extra space here, or extra spaces here towards the end. How we can get rid of this? That's another very simple thing to do. So you could go in here and you do res equals res dot strip, strip of a white space. And then as you see, the white space that we had it here after the lives is just gone. Okay. Now, some people can say, oh, but this is not the most efficient way to add or concatenate words. Of course not. Here's another, here exactly the same, but in one line of code. And this is exactly the beauty of Python. You can do things really in very few lines than comparing to other programming languages. So if I say, if I want to try to add all of these, I can use the function called join, and then I put those into a list here. And again, if I do the result here, I could get exactly what I got before adding, the space here. But you can add the space here, and you get exactly the same. As you see, this output and this output can be obtained in the same way. As I said, excuse me. So as I said here, this is a function, which are probably a couple lines here of code, and here's just one line of code, and it gets you exactly the same result. Okay. All right, so let me switch gears here and switching to exception handling. So exception handling. So what do I have in here? So I say, imagine I want a function that takes two numbers and returns the division of the two numbers. In other words, if I have a ratio, it's a function called ratio, and returns, if I get here, this function takes two numbers, x and y, x and y, and returns x divided by y. Okay, so that's the case. Now, what if I want to try to say the input is, let's say, x and y, and output would be x divided by y. That's easy. So we could say return x divided by y. That's quite simple. So in this case, if I want to say, what's the ratio of, let's say, 10 and 2, the answer is 5, as expected. Now, when I'm saying, let's say, any other numbers, look at 2.04, and that's what you got. The issue started to kick in when I'm giving, some weird input like this. Oh, how do you define 10 divided by 0? Then I get a division by 0. Now, a good code is actually catching all these corner cases because you don't know what is in the data. Especially if you have a major, a massive code that runs for a long time, and it runs or do computation and calculations based on a large amount of data. The data will never ever be perfect. In that case, you need to take care of all these cases so that the code will not crash and you would waste so much time in redoing the same work. So what can we do here? So if I have, let's say, five numbers. So let's say I have x to be, let's say, 2 and 8 and 5 and probably 0 and 4. Excuse me. So if I want to try to divide 10 by all these numbers, I could say for element in X, which means all those numbers. And then I could say print 10 divided by element, right? Element. So that's what I get. So the first time when I say, okay, 10 divided by 2, it's 5. 10 divided by 8 is 1.25. 10 divided by 5 is 2. And when it comes to the 0, I get this error message, and it did not go to the 4, the last one, which tells you that the code just crashed when it hit that problem. So how we can solve this problem? Then the very first thing to do is to try to use the try block exception. So I'm saying here, try to return this. And if this is not successful, then do exception as ERR. And I could say, multiple things. I could say, pass, which means or return. Let's do return none or something like that. So now if I go back and try to do the same, as you see, there is no crash right now. Let me explain this again one more time. So I have the ratio of two numbers. I'm saying try to return X divided by Y. If you are unsuccessful to do that, which in this case, when the denominator is 0, that would not be successful. In this case, you need to return something else, which is captured by this side of the try except block. Now, there are there are a list of exceptions that we will talk about them in a moment. But in this case, it's just divided by 0. Now, what if I'm going to try to do, ABC? And the same thing here. As you see, the last two, does it make sense to divide 10 by ABC? What does that mean? In this case, 10 divided by 0, that's one type of error. 10 divided by ABC, it's another type of error. But in both cases, the try except block is capturing that or taking care of the code not to crash. It goes to the end of the list. As you see, that's what I decided I would like to say to see that the output in this case to be none. I could say this is funny. Exactly the same. And then when you run it again, the output would be this is funny. That's your decision to say what would be the output. Okay, so you could also be more specific. You could say this is basically a print statement. You don't need to do anything here. You could say print the error message. What's the error message? And then, as you could see, well, it still returns none, but it says the print. This is the print statement, division by 0, and unsupported operand type for integer and string, which means you cannot divide an integer with a string here. Okay. All right. So also, what the try except block, it doesn't need to be only one type. You could do multiple ways, or use multiple error handling in the same code. So if I say, here's an example: DAF divide X comma Y, and then I say try to return try result. Let's call it result equals, oh no, I can say it return X divided by Y. That's the most important thing. Now I could do except 0 division error, and I could say print are you dividing by 0? Question marks. Now, exception. No, I could say type error, as you could see, as ERR, and I could say print ERR. I could say except exception as ERR, print something went bad, if you like, and no, else you could say print result is well, result plus str. Let's say, oh, it's just something here. I could say here just print result, and finally there's a finally here, and finally like that, print. There's should be a colon here, and then print. I could say exception execution completed. So I'll go over it one more time. So with that, I saw there's a couple of questions. I will start looking at the questions. But if I say divide 5 with 4, that's one thing I would like to say. And then divide 5 with 0, that's another case. And then divide 5 with A. So as expected, the first one, execution completed, because there is nothing wrong here. It always goes to the finally here. So with 5 divided by 4, I did not return the number. I did not print actually the number, but that's what I can get here. The second one, 5 divided by 0, it says, are you dividing by 0? This is my message that I entered here. And the third one, actually, when 5 divided by A, it's exactly pretty much the same unsupported operand type for integer and string. And again, I got execution completed. Let me see, there are some other. Can you have more than one line as part of the construct? I don't understand. What does that mean? Please give me more description. While throwing error, it is also giving none. Can you have only the errors? Sure. That's always you can just return the error in that case. So let's see. I'm going to do the same here. Divide. I could say I have x comma y, and then if I say return, try to return x divided by y, exception as ERR, and return ERR. So in this case, when I do divide 5 and 0, that gets you exactly the division error, which is the error here as the output. Another case, you could say print and get that. You see division by 0, and that's the value of what the function is returning. In the output, I don't understand. What does that mean? I'm sorry, there are so many questions here, and sure, I see what you mean. So let's do, it does not necessarily need to be one line of code. So what do I mean by that? So if I say, let's take out this function, def, do something, and then I say x comma y. So try, I could say, let's say divide x by x equals x divided by y. So which I'm overwriting the value of x, and then take the result of the ratio to become x, and then probably do y equals probably y divided by probably, or you know what, just do some print statements here, or print hello there. And you could do it even this way. Well, this is a syntax error, but you could say, you could do not print even, you could do 1 divided by 0, and you could say except exception as ERR, and then you could say pass, which means do nothing if there's an error. As you see, within the try block, it has 2 lines here, so it doesn't need to be necessarily need to be 1 line. So let's do this as code, and here, and yep, so like that. And when I call the function do something, and I say, 10 and probably 0, and again, it's just pass. There is no error. There is no nothing here. It's just pass over there. Even if you try to print it, and there's none, there's no output. If you could say return, ha ha ha, and then it's going to be ha ha. Now, if you take 10 divided by 6, as you could see, the very first line is still working. This line is okay. The second line, which is 1 divided by 0, it's not okay. That's why it goes into the except and exception block. Okay. Can you have more than one exception code in one except statement? You need to separate them. They need to be separated, because you need to call the exception differently. I mean, if it's the exception of divided by 0, it's not the same like dividing an integer with a number. Why did you get execution completed for input A, but not input Y equals 0? I'm not sure I understand the question here. Okay. We are importing a library. There are no libraries here, so it's just standard Python here. It looks like the finally is always executed. Yes, absolutely, Dave. You're right. So it's always the finally is executed no matter what. All right. And there is actually a complete list of exceptions that you can search it out, find it out. Okay. Let me try to do this thing. As another example, for this one, I could say, I can open a file if you like. This yet, I can try to do open a file, assuming this operation is possible. What I'm saying, let's say text.xlsx, which is a file that I'm trying to open. Again, this is not the right way to do it, but I'm saying this is the reason what I'm trying to do. As you see, this failed. This thing, it does not work. Even if I copy it here and try to do it, you see there's an error message here. No such file, text.xlsx. So there is no such file. So the error message here was completely different. It's not, the X and Y, if you like. The X is 10 and the Y is 6. The ratio is okay. So the line number 1 is absolutely okay, but line number 2 is the problematic. And if I take that and comment them out and try to do it, as you see, there is no output here. Or if you like, I can make it return X. So look at that. It's 10 divided by 6 is 1.66, and there is now no problem. But if I'm trying to open a file this way, which this is not the right way to do it, you get, the exception goes right away there. Something went wrong. And as you see, that is the error message I'm getting. Okay. So given said that, I can do one little thing. Let's do assertion here. Okay. Switch topics. Probably, yeah. So let's do assertion. What does that mean? So an assertion is a sanity check that you can run on or turn off when you are done with your testing of the program. I will explain this in a bit. The easiest way to think about it, it's like raise a flag or raise an error if the output that you are expecting from the function is or the calculation is not what you are expecting. Here's the simplest example. If I say, if I'm prompting the user input, so let's say X is the result of prompting the user to enter a name. And if you like, you can run this. And then I say, if, assert, I could say assert, then X starts with S, then assert if that's okay, then or assert start with X. Otherwise, I could say bad entry or wrong name, if you like, wrong name. So let's give it a try. So now the computer is waiting for the user to prompt to add a name. So when I do Sam like this, there's no problem. However, if I'm going back, is probably Max, and then it's something wrong name. As you see, this is the error message that I was expecting, or I'm saying assert this is true. If this is not true, that would be the output here, which is very, very important in Python. So, excuse me. So I'm saying the name should start with uppercase S. Now, if the name doesn't start with uppercase S, then give me this error message. And that's exactly assertion error, wrong name. I can't change it to anything else. Try again or wrong name. It does not start with uppercase S. So like this, uppercase S. So again, if I say Mary, and again, wrong name does not start with an S. If I say Sarah here, Sarah, it's still no problem. It doesn't give me any error message. Okay, so imagine I am saying that you need to clean a string from all the punctuations that I'm getting you. So if I say import, let's start with this. DEF as defining a function and in cars. So this function is basically going to calculate how many characters, non-punctuations there are in a string. So function, this is now a docstring function that calculates the total number of characters excluding, I want to make it clear, excluding punctuations. So if I have that, and then I say, there are a couple ways to get into the result. I could say, n is for the counter to be 0. And I'm saying for, character ch in text, if I say if ch, let's say it now in English. not in, not in, not in characters, not characters, sorry, punctuations, and I will get you into this in a moment. In this case, you need to say n equals n plus 1. So, and finally, you just need to return n. Now, what's punctuations? Let me remember, I don't know if you remember, but from last time I said there's one library, it's called string. And if in this library, I could say string dot punctuations like this, and gets me all the punctuations that are available. So I'm saying if the character not in this thing here, which is the punctuations from the string library, and try to put it in here, and that's it. So now I need to test it, and I need to copy the library on top of here. Already, it's already, I called that library. And what's going to happen, I'm going to write a text, and I'm trying to see what would be the number of characters. So in this case, and I do ncars of today is and probably let's do some other punctuations, and I say today is Sunday, right? Sunday. So in this case, I should expect to see 16 characters. Now, white spaces should count. We have 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. It did exclude those characters. Let me make it shorter so you people can see it. So I see in Sunday, let's say Sunday, just like that, S-U-N, the answer should be 3. And that's what we get here. Basically, I'm eliminating those. And if I add now a space here and a space here, the answer should be 5. But it doesn't need to be like that. I need to also be able to remove white spaces from that character. But this is easy. We can always do it. Okay, so now the first assertion that I would like to do, assert ncars, and I'm saying if I say ABD, couple of spaces, I should see the answer is 3. Otherwise, bad output, or well, wrong, let's say call it output, incorrect output, probably better, incorrect output. So if I do this, the problem is it's not 3. However, if I say I'm eliminating all the spaces, no problem. It did not raise any problem here. Okay, so how we can fix this function in order to take care of the white spaces? You could say if ch is not a punctuation and ch not equals a white space, then you could say you are incrementing this. And now I don't need this cell here, but I can go right to this one. Oh, now as you see, it's okay with the white spaces, but how about adding a couple punctuations like this? Well, it's still okay because ncars of that should get me exactly what I have in here. That should give me 3 because it's eliminating those punctuations and eliminating the white spaces. Even if you put white spaces in towards the end like that, it will ignore it. I can add some punctuations here, not a problem, and a couple of spaces here, and it still gets me the 3 because it ignores all the punctuations and counts only the characters here. Okay, I think it might be a good moment to take a break. And probably let's take a 10 minutes break and we will continue. I want you to look at this exercise and try to understand what I have been done. And I will look I will try to add, we'll go over it one more time right after the break. Okay, so let's connect in around 11:12. Thank you. All right. So let me see if there are some questions. How do you add line numbers? So it's you hit escape L. Escape L would get you the lines. If you want to remove the lines, like here, escape L, that gets you the line number. And if you want to remove those, you just do escape L one more time, and you can get rid of those. Please scroll down. I can't see the new part. That's the part, Thomas. I'm not sure. Probably this is for a comment earlier. Can you get only error messages instead of big error detailed in assertion? Error messages instead of big error details. I'm not sure I understand this question. Okay, I got error for, it says index invalid syntax for ch not in. It says invalid syntax. It's hard for me to, if for ch not in. No, you could do for ch. You cannot do not in. The problem is the not here. Tafting. I think this is. I'm sorry if I'm not saying the name right. So for ch in strings, not in, you cannot do not in. You can use the if statement in order to eliminate the cases where the character is in or not in punctuations. No, I was actually on a break here. I see so many questions coming. Please, how to show line numbers? It's done. Just escape L. Explain once again. Assert. Yeah, I'm going to continue getting explaining the assert. Thank you for your patience here. Able to see all questions here from all. I'm not sure. This is probably a question related to Zoom. Like line number points to error etc. Okay, so let's continue here. So before the break, I started to say, if I'm interested in calculating what's the number of characters excluding white spaces and punctuations. And in this case, I said I can give some string like ABD, some text here, and then in this case, the output should be 3, because these are the only 3 characters in that string, and raise an error if that the output, this function, does not return 3. Okay, so let's try something different. So we said this would work, no problem. Now, if I say I want another test, which I do use assert in cars, and in this case, I want to try to say, some character, $, ABD, and probably N, star, and then NN, and probably and probably some other stuff. In this case, what should I see? I should see ABD and NN, that should be 5. So that should be 5. Otherwise, you could say incorrect 2, if you like, incorrect output 2. In this case, wow, it's still working. And what if I want to say assert in cars, and again, I could say some punctuations, excuse me, and I have, let's say, A, B, C, and then I could say, let's say, I'm adding this times white spaces, not a problem, and I can do 1, 2, 3, and some other punctuations. And in this case, the function needs to return ABC, and that's it. Should be 3. And if this is not 3, then you need to raise an error of incorrect output 3. So in this case, I see incorrect output 3. And the reason is there is 1, 2, 3 here, which are digits. I did not account for those. So if I take the 1, 2, 3 out, it's still okay, no problem. There is no, the function is passes all 3 tests. With this input, I get 3. With this input, I get 5. And with this input, I get 3. So now when I'm introducing some numbers here, like this one, it should still being 3 characters here, because I need to also exclude the digits. So back into the string module, and you could do numbers. I'm sorry, digits. You can look at the digits here. It's from 0 to 9, all the numbers here. But you could also try to do, you can modify the function and, character not in those digits, and now run it. And as you see, now it's okay. So I have any number, and I can add even more numbers here, and it's still okay. It ignores the digits in the function. Let me go one more time on the function and try to explain it. So what's the purpose of this function? This function is actually taking a string, any string, as you could see it here, this string or this string or this string. And then I'm saying for every character in the string, if the character, not a punctuation and not a white space and not a digit, then increment the n by 1. And finally, just return what is the total number of characters. So there are 3 assertions. Number 1, if I have ABD and space and some white spaces with no, it's not with no characters, but it could be with some other numbers, you can get 3. The second assert, ABD with some characters and probably another two characters separated from those 3 characters, should get 5, because ABD and those 5 characters. And here I have white spaces, I have characters, and I have digits, and it should still get me 3, because these are the only 3 characters from the whole string. And in this case, I get no errors at all. Okay. So, okay. Now, you remember earlier when we talked about the error, the try except block? You could sometimes or somehow you can even use the assert in order to not using, or if you want to try to avoid the try except block. Here's an example. So if I do define a function, which is the division function, x and y, and I can say this, assert str of x dot is digit. If that's the case, otherwise you say x is not a digit. Okay, that's the first assertion. Assert str of y is digit. Otherwise, you just say y is not digits, not a digit, or not digits, if you like, digits. So, and the third thing, assert float of y not equals 0, and otherwise y is 0. And in this case, only then return x divided by y. So if I say div of 5 and 2, not a problem. I get 2.5 because this is okay, because when you do str of 5 is digit. str of 2, again, it is digits, which means there is no error message here. And y is not 0. That's absolutely 2 is not 0. And then it comes to the last line here, which is returning the ratio of x divided by y. Excuse me. So if that's the case, what if I'm saying, 5 and 0? And in this case, I'm getting y is 0. And that's exactly the assertion that I can get. But again, remember, this is not to avoid crashing of the code, but this is just to show what are the problems in the code, which is going to crash as well. So if I have 5 and A, B, and then it's the same problem. Y is not a digit. So what if I say, even 6 here, oh, it's a different problem. You could say this is a different type of problem because it passed this, but it did not pass the last one. And you can add additional assert here to make sure that the type of the input is to be an integer or a float, not as a string. Okay. One last thing I would like to do with when talking about assertions and so on is probably this exercise. This exercise, when I say A equals 10 and B equals 12. So those are basically the two variables I'm defining here. Please do go ahead and try to do what's A plus B would return, or before trying to type it, what would be A plus B? I'm giving you probably a minute to try to type it in your screen and try to understand what A plus B in this case be. It would be the result. Try to guess before. We can. I can look at what do you think you can. You can type your answer here in the what B. Yes. Yeah. I see. Thank you, Ravi. Aha, exactly. As you see, it's 10, 12, but it's not exactly 10, 12 as a number. It's 10, 12 as a string, which takes this string here and concatenate this string here, and it's going to make it one large string. So, or 4-digit string. So if I say in here, that's exactly would be the result. So the quotes here indicates that the result of A and B, because these are two strings, the result would be one string. So now look at that. It's exactly the same if I say this is, let's say, Magnimind, and then B is Academy, and then I say A plus B, that gets you Magnimind Academy, of course, without a space here. But you could see what I'm trying to get. There is no much difference here. The fact that it's a digit string doesn't mean much here. Now, one more thing that I would like to talk about, when I say I have 101 and is digit like that, that gives you a true. When I say 101 AAA, if you like, that's a false, which indicates actually if a string is all the characters in a string are digits or not. So when I say ABC, that gets you a false. But if I say 101 or some other numbers here, that's continue to be true. Okay. Okay, let's switch gears here and try to create one file. So creating file. So let's do create a file. So let's do that. I can do the following. So I am those who are using Mac or Linux. The following couple lines would work for them. If you are not using Mac or if you are using Windows, you most likely need to find what's the equivalent in Windows. Since I'm using Mac here, So do not be surprised that this might not work for you. I'm saying RM, which is exactly the command line. If I have the command line here, so that's the command line. So basically, I think I am sharing my screen. New share. So that's the. So basically, if I see, let me see. Let me let me do this for a moment. I'm going to do so. So if I say I'm removing a file called text or data, if you like, data file, and then txt. So in Windows, you could do del space slash or forward slash f and the file name, which is the data underscore file.txt. So in that case, it tells me, oh, there's no such file, which is exactly what I want. So now I'm saying echo, and then I say hello, and I'm saying word. I want to push this to data underscore file.txt, which means I'm taking this text here and I'm pushing it or into a file called or saving it into a file called data underscore file.txt. I can add one more exclamation mark, which means you are outside the Python, you are in the command line. So I could do echo. Echo stands for print here. Are you ready to learn Python? So I am appending that file, data underscore file.txt. And the last one thing, I need exclamation mark here, echo, Python is fun. And then you could do, again, I'm pushing this file, this string here, which is Python is fun, into a file called data underscore file.txt. And when I run this, I'm not expecting any file to be removed, but if I run it again, as you see, that command, that comment, or that that error message is gone because the file is already there. Hold a second. I want to share, my command line here for a second. So please give me a second. So let me share my screen one more time. So you are able to see what I have in here, right? So basically, this is the folder, and the file, which is I just created, which is data underscore. Let me just close this window. So basically, I see this file. So if I remove this file, data dot text, so the file is not there. So when I run the script, a couple lines of script, I get that file back again. So when I do ls minus ltr, as you see, that file is in here. And when I do cat, those who are Linux Mac users, they know what this command do. What this command is actually printing the content of the file. As you see, exactly what I printed, what I was doing in the Python section. Let me see how to get the command line in Anaconda. So the command line in Anaconda is basically if you do exclamation mark, and you can get into the command line. Okay. Sure. So let's see. Me share one more time, but this time I'm sharing the Google. Okay, so we are in here. So I have that file. So imagine I want to try to get into this file, and I want to try to open that the file that I just created, which is data underscore file.txt. Okay, so here to open a file, how I can read a file in Python. So I can do m2, I can reading file with Python, of course. Okay, so how can we do this? We could do f for file equals open the file name, which is exactly what I have in here. So that's that. And as you see, when I hit the tab, it understands, it does autocomplete for the file, where is the file is located. And finally is the mode. The mode, as by the way, if you just try to see what are the options, there are several options here, but the mode here is R, which is the default, is mode equals R. It's I'm opening the file for reading. And then finally, if I do print, you don't need the colon here, and then print f dot read, and you could do f dot close. Close. I'm just opening the file. Line number 2 is to print the file, to print the read of the file, and line number 3 is closing the file. And that's what I get here. This is exactly what I put here in this cell. Hello world, that's the first line. It's pushed to the file called data underscore text. The next thing is I'm appending the file. Once the file is created, I'm appending the file. Are you ready to learn Python? I'm again adding this as a separate line, the second line in the file. And the third one, Python is fun, as again, I'm adding this information into that file. In this block here, or in this cell here, I'm opening that specific file that I created with the mode of reading. You can open the file for several options. One of them is for reading, one of them is for writing, and this is good because sometimes you want to protect your file from being, corrupted, from being deleted or so. It depends. That's how you take care of the information in a file. Okay, so the modes or the options would be something like that. You could say it's R for reading. That's the default, if you like, default, and you could do actually W is for open, for writing. You have, these are the most common usage of the mode. X is for create a new file, and open for writing. You can have also A is open for writing, and append in the end. And you have also some other options such as binaries, if you want to try to read an image and try to put the output in a file, and so on. Okay, so there are some other options. You can do the search, what are the options for the mode, or alternatively, you could go inside the function, which is the open function, try to click the plus sign, and there is a lot of documentations. Is exactly what I'm showing you here. So those basically are the ones, the options in opening a file for the mode. So you can get all of those into, you can try to use them for different purposes. Okay, so once we have that, I can do, I can open the file again. F equals open. I'm going back to the same file, which is data underscore, that's file.txt. I can open it again with a read, and then I can do f.close, and that's it. And now I say, can I check if the file is closed or open? Yeah, that's an easy way. So you could do f.closed, Remember, this is closed and this is closed. And there is one difference here. This is actually without the parentheses, that's called a property. And this one is called a method of the object of a class file. So in this case, if f closed, then print, I could say file is closed, file is closed, sorry, and else, you could do else here, print file is open, file is open. And that's it. So look at that. As you see, if I open the file, then close it, and then check if the file is closed, no surprise, the file is closed. File is closed. Now, what if I open the file and keep it open, which means I'm commenting out the line number 2 here. In this case, file is open, as you see. You just open it and kept it open. Now, keeping a file open is not a good practice. Here is a way or an example. You could keeping a file open. This might do some, maybe by mistake, by accident, you can write things into a file which you were not planning to. And in order to come up with a better way to open a file, and then if you forget to close the file, it will close it automatically for you. We use the with clause. You start with the with, open, it's exactly the same here. And then again, data underscore file dot text, you open it for read, and as f, and in this case, as you see, there's a colon, it comes to the next line, and you could say print, and you could do f dot read. And finally, if you try to do now here, if f dot closed like that, print file is closed, and else print file is open. So let me know, in the comments here, what do you think it's going to print? Well, there are two prints. I'm not talking about what's the print in the file. That's totally fine. But I would like to know what would be the print, whether the file is closed or print. What do you think? And I see the question here about ML, what is the difference between echo and one sign of bigger and echo 2 with the 2 signs. So the 2, when the file exists and you're trying to append, you use the double bigger sign. And if the file is, you just want to try to put the first time, the initial time, something into the file, use a single symbol there. I agree with you, Ravi. File is closed. It's absolutely closed, because the lines in here, line 4 and above and forward, is basically outside the scope of the with statement. So those ones actually, the lines here, once you go outside the for loop, closed. However, I'm going to do exactly more or less the same thing if I'm trying to indent those lines here. What do you think now? The file will be closed or open? Yep. So in this case, the file is open. Absolutely, it's open. I see also another question. What if I want to create a file somewhere else? Not a problem. You can put the full path of the file if you want to try to create it. So not in here, but you can create a file with other options. As you see, you can create a file for open for writing, or create a file and open it for writing with the X command. For example, if I want to try to say I want to, this is to answer one of the questions here about how I can create a file in some other location. You could do F, the file equals open, and you could do it's my download, if you like, or not download, my probably home directory or some other, yeah, you can do download here, and you could say xxx.txt, and then you could do this as with an X, so you can add things, and you could do f dot write, write hello there, hello there, and then done. As you could see, oh yeah, sure, shouldn't be like that, and it should not be indented. As you see, I was able to create the file and add hello there in that file, and you can check that in your end. It doesn't need to be in the same folder and the same directory, but it can be any location. You can put the full path of the file inside the function here. Okay, good question. Let's go back in here. As you said, I mean, if it's within the width scope, it's going to be open. Outside the width scope, it's going to be closed. And what if I say, if I'm taking all these and I'm holding the shift tab, it takes everything outside, which means it's outside the width scope. And in this case, I'm printing, the line number 2 is printing the content of that file. And once I'm outside the width, the scope of the width clause, then the file is automatically closed for you. And then F closed, that's the case, and then prints if file is closed. Okay. Here, what we can also open the file, the same file here, to do some other data manipulation. You could do with open of the file, same file, data underscore text with read, if you like, as F. And then in this case, you could do text equals F dot read. And in this case, I could do print text. Do you think this is going to print something? What do you think this is going to print? Yes or no? I mean, the answer is yes or no. Yes, okay. Well, as you see, because I defined a text function here, a text object from reading the file, you could do with open, the text will carry the content of the file, and you can print it outside. As you see, it does print things outside here. Now, what if I want to take this content and try to create a second file with everything uppercase? You take this file and convert it into uppercase. In this case, what you could do, just copy, cut, and paste what I have in here. And then I say, that's the text, and I could say with open, it's another file, with open data, or uppercase file, if you like, uppercase file.txt, and you could say creating the file and for writing as ff, if you like, that's the new file, and then I'm saying ff.write, and then I see that I'm going to take text, which is the text I got from reading the first file. I'm reading the first file, and then you do text.upper, and that's it. So let me just create a couple cells here so we can be in the middle of the screen. I keep forgetting to do this. And now when we run that, you see, you don't see anything on the screen. But when you look here, you'll see that there is a file created in the same folder, which is uppercase a case file. So if you want to try to read this time the uppercase file, that's another simple exercise. You could do f open equals open down. The file in here, no, not that. So I'm trying to open this file, dot text for read, and you could do f dot read, and that gets you, oh, yeah, but there's slash n here. You could do that with probably we can do for line in f, and then print line and equals slash n. So, well, or probably like that. Yeah, so something like this. So that's how you can read line by line. So that's the content, original content. I push this content into uppercase and save it in this file, and then I'm reading this file, and no surprise, you could see that the content comes back as everything uppercase. We can also read word by word when we read a file. What do I mean by that? So if I go back into the original file, so I can do f equal open, and then text. I'm reading this as in the reading format, and you could do for line in file, and then you could do for word in line, and a line dot split, of course, split. That's how we can split those words by space, and then print word in here, and you could do end equals that slash n, and for line in f, not in file, and that's what you see in here. So you see hello, that's the first thing. The hello word, are you ready to learn Python? Python is fun. So that's pretty much the same content, but this time we split, we read line by line, and then we split each line into words using the split function that we can get in here. Okay. I got 3 lines in Windows, didn't have to do, yeah, you could, again, I mean, Windows, you can probably look for, you know, the equivalent commands in Windows. Can you go up a little bit? Yeah, that's what I have. Can you explain the code? How can we parse them after reading? Okay. Jay, I'm not sure I understand your question, which code you're referring to. But anyway, we can, I'm sure we will find the time to go over it again. Okay, here I want to introduce a new module in Python called datetime. So I want to try to use the import date time module. And basically this module, or with this module, you can do datetime now. So as you see, that's my time in, it's 2020 4/19, that's today, and this is the time. Of course, your information might be different. It depends where you are located, physically located, and so on. So, but this is the time of my system. So you see it's 11 o'clock, 50 minutes and 49 seconds. And if you run it again, no wonder, you know, the seconds and the minutes might be different, because now is different from now, which means the now at that time is different than now at this time. Okay. So let's try using or leveraging this module, datetime, and I want to try every time to add a new line into the file. I want to say what would be, you know, the timestamp, if you like. Okay, so we can do the following with open. I'm opening the file again. So date, not date, data file, and opening it for appending. This time it's not R, it's not W, it's not X, it's A, because I want to try to append something into the file. Excuse me. So now is, again, I can say date time. That's exactly date time. And then I want to try to say now. And you could, I could say, I can get from, uh, I mean, I can improve or try to get the object of date time to be looks like date time. So you could do, I'm overwriting now to be now, and then strf time, which I want to try to convert to get a string from that date time in this format. So you could say, I want to get the year, and then slash, month, slash, then a day, and then you could say the hour, and then colon. Again, you could say the minutes, and one more time is I want to get the seconds. And if you could get this, I want to say file dot write, and you go back and try to add a couple things. First of all, I want to try to put the information into a new line. So that's the slash n plus now, which is now is a string. And here I want to try to add some spaces between the now and the string I would like to write. And I could write here, continue to have fun with Python. So and that's it. So that gets me what I need. So basically, you don't see any output on the screen because I did not print anything from the file. But remember, the continue to have fun and concatenated with now, it's going to be created it's going to be added to the file data underscore file, um, with a timestamp which is carried by now. So now, if you wonder what's now, you just try to see it this way. So that's now, which was not exact the time, but this one when I was running this cell here, it's 2020. That looks like a date and the time here. And the idea, if I'm going back and try to read the file with open, data file, now with a read format as f, and then you do f dot read, as you see, hmm, probably I need to print here. Uh, Here we go. So I just printed. It says again, that's the original file. And I added this line here. That's a slash n. So just to separate what I had before and now. And now is basically this thing here. Well, yeah, that's exactly what I had. And then continue to have fun with Python as a string. And you can go over it again and again and again. So if I run it one more time and try to read it one more time, as you see, the second line that I added is having a different timestamp. As you see, 55, that's the minutes. This is the seconds, and again, continue to have it over and over and over. So now if I run it a couple of times, as you see, and try to read it, as you see, how many lines I was adding to the end or appending that file towards the end. Um, uh, well, there is there's a question here. Can you please teach in Windows? Well, I mean, Python can work in both, in all operating systems. So that's not, unique to any operating system. The only thing that I was using from the command line, which you don't need it that much, are those commands. But you don't have to create a file, using those lines. You can get those. You can create a file and add those ticks in that file, and then do the entire work with this file. Appreciate your comment here. Please stick to Linux. Well, again, this is some of the command lines that it's quite known in the Linux, Mac. Cat, etc. are not working when I'm using. Yes, of course. The RM, the cat are not working for Windows. These are, unless you want to go to the Power shell in much about these commands. These are not, the idea is not to show you, to teach you here Linux. or command lines. This was an easy way how I can create a file and try to do data manipulation with it. What's the final number in datetime dot? What is the final number in datetime dot now? I didn't understand what exactly is the number microsecond. Oh, I see. Yeah. This is probably some time. Could be seconds, milliseconds, and so on. You can look at the description in the function. Dot echo statement works for me in Windows. Most likely, Celine, because you have probably PowerShell in Windows. Can you show to find the location of the created with file name? Yeah, of course. I love this question. This is a very good question. Can you show how to find the location of the file created with file name? Absolutely, you can. Just this is going to be probably in the coming hour. So keep that question for later, and I will be able to cover it. Okay, let me, as I said, I can't take every here. We have over 100 people in this class, and might be a little bit I can't take. I wish I could take all the questions, but let's continue. Okay, so here is you could do with the modules. So far, and this is probably the question how I can find a specific file if it exists or not. For this, I can introduce a new module called OS. It stands for operating system. And again, if you were worried how I can do, is it different in Windows and Linux? Once you start using the operating system, you shouldn't need to worry too much about what is your operating system. So let's start with some text here. So let's do OS module, and here I'm importing the OS. So it's just an import. So for example, if you know how to do something in the command line, when you're in Windows and you do CMD, and you could probably just do dir, that would work for you for sure. Now, you can run the same thing with the OS system, and then here you could say, if you are in Linux, you could do mkdir. I think this would work also in Windows. You could do test. I'm creating a folder called test here. So if that's I don't have such a folder in here in the same folder. So the moment you run it, it says it returns 0, which means it doesn't return any error. So if you switch back, let me try to share my screen for this one. As you see, I have the test as a folder in here. So when I go test there's nothing there. I did not create the folder in the command line here. I created the folder from this one. I can create a test2. I'm switching back to the Python, and I'm creating a folder, a directory as test2. And when I switch back here, I could say ls minus ltr, which tells me, oops, of course, I'm not in the right directory, ls minus ltr. You see test2 was created here as a folder, test and test2. Let me switch back to the command, to the tab here. As I said, I mean, that's what I did in the second time. You could also, instead of doing that, and then it's more like system dependence, if it's Windows or Linux or Mac, you could replace that with OS, and then you could do mkdir, and you could do xxx, which is another folder, or xyz here. Let's try that, and then you don't see any output. But if you look at the folder where is your script, you can see. Let me share that screen one more time. share computer. No, I'm trying to share my desktop for some reason, and it doesn't allow me. Um, let's see. Okay, so that's the tab, but I'm trying to share. Anas, are you in the audience, Anas? So if you can, because new share. So let's do. Okay. So basically, you could say, I mean, I created the XYZ as a folder. And if you look again, I created that folder XYZ from the command line. You don't have to worry too much about it. So let's try to do who can share participants, only host. Okay. I'm trying to see if I can share the entire desktop, my desktop here, rather than switching between the different tabs. Okay, let me see. Okay. So basically, that's how I created XYZ as a folder. More than that, you could actually recursively creating a directory. So you could do create directory in a recursive way, which is like that. You could do os.mk make years like that, and you could create YYY slash XYZ. And in this case, it creates this folder and it creates another folder in that folder, because those are basically folders, not necessarily, this is not necessarily one folder. And when you run it, you see that if you check your folder, your location, you will see that a folder called YYY was created. Inside that that folder, another folder called XYZ was created as well. So that's what we have in here. Let's see. And let's see what we get. Yes, I see the YYY here, CD YYY, and inside the YYY there is XY and delete a file in a specific folder. So I could say, I can create some file. Remember the file that that gets or captures captured the uppercase information. So if I do in here, that's uppercase something, uppercase file. So if I want to try to remove that file, I could do OS and then remove, and then you could do upper and the uppercase. And when you try to remove it, and again, if you can switch and try to see if that file is still there, that file is gone. No more. That file is no longer exists in the same folder. You could do also remove a specific folder like ORRM stands for remove dir, dir, and I could say remove the folder YYY that I just created here. Again, you will not be able to see some path empty, directory not empty. That's totally fine, but you could do remove. Well, in this case, because YYY is not empty, it gives you an error message. But in order to go around this, you could do remove dirs, and again, it's not empty. Um, but this is in a recursive way. That should get you removing all the files. But maybe it's for protection. It says it's not empty. But keep that in mind. You should. Actually, if I want to try to remove XYZ in under YYY, that would work as well. And now because YYY is empty, because this is the only folder in the YYY folder, and as you see, remove RM. If I do RM dear, sorry, dear, that's no such. Oh, of course, because we deleted that folder and no longer exists. Okay. Well, one more thing, sometimes you want to know what folder you are at. So you could use OS, then get current working directory. Current working directory is that, and that gets you what do I have in here. Most likely, if you do it in your screen, you will get something completely different. That's totally fine, and that will tell you where is actually the session is recorded. And let me go over a couple more things, and then I will probably look at the questions. I see there are so many questions coming at the moment. I'm happy to go over the entire module if you give in the coming few minutes. All right, so we talked about current working directory that gets you the result. And by the way, if I take that and I say, if a specific file, os.path, you see the path exists, and that's actually that was one question. And I can say, if that file, which is data underscore file, as you see, I can check if that specific file, well, in this case, it's in the same folder. Okay. Let's see, there are so many questions here. Okay, so let me see. Please share. Oh, I see. I thought I am sharing. Oh, let's see. Can everyone see what I'm my screen at the moment? No such file directory. And okay, most likely many of those questions, yes. Okay, yes, we can. Okay, all right, thank you. Sure, sorry about that. Probably I was sharing the command line. Let's see. All right, sorry. Let me go over some of the commands that I was doing here. So again, from OS is a module or a library in Python, which is widely used. It can be used to do a lot of creating files, creating folders, subfolders. It can check for if a specific file in a specific location exists. It can remove folders recursively or just in one layer. It can tell you what is the current working directory and so on. So for example, the first one here, os.system, you can run something in the command line that you do, whether it's CMD in Windows or just the terminal in Mac/Linux. You could do mkdir test2 that creates a folder of test2. If you want to try to rather than being dependent on the operating system, so if this doesn't work in Windows, you could say os.mkdir and then the name of the folder, so you don't have to worry too much now about what is it Windows or is it subfolder called a folder, it's XYZ. You can create actually in a recursive way, which means OS make the directories YYY, and inside YY create another folder called XYZ. You could remove a specific file. with the OS being in a specific location, you can put either the relative path or the absolute path of the file, or where is this file sits. You could do remove directories recursively. You could say, I want to remove YYY/XYZ. You can also remove a specific folder like this one, look for the current working directory. That's the get CWD. CW stands for current working directory, and that gets you where is your file is. And os.path exists. You can check if a specific file, whether it's, again, if it's an absolute or relative path, and it will get you returns if the file exists or not. In other words, I could say, if that's my current working directory, and I can copy that and try to share it here, and it exactly gets you the same thing. Now, if the file, I know there is no such a file in my screen, and then it would return false because this file does not exist there. So again, if the file exists, it returns true. If the file doesn't exist, it would return false. That's with the path. You could also get what's the process ID of any process. You could do OS, then get PID, and that gets you the process number. You could also get, again, this is probably more for computer scientists here to know what each process in the computer. You could do os.get UID, and then that's the file. When you are in the command line, you just do ls minus ltr, and that will tell you, or the ps command to tell you what each process is. The next thing I would like you to get, you can also get some information about the username, the uname, and that gets you all the information about your system, about your the name, the Mac, your operating system, and so on. Okay, and you can do that. And probably the last thing here, you could do get list of operating system, os.list years, and you could say os.get current working directory, and that's a file. As you see, this is everything, all the files that I have in that turn as a list of a list of objects here. You could see what I have in here. I have that file, and some of them are folders, some of them are files, and so on. One of the nicest things, actually, which I would like to do is how you can rename a file with Python. It doesn't matter where the file sits, but you could do this through the os.rename. As you see, rename. And imagine I want to try to call that file into something else. So you could do, this is the source, that's the source, and let's call it this file. And then the destination would be, I want to call it this file else, something else. So you call it file underscore 100. So what does this command do? It goes into that file, rename this file into this file. This would be the new file. You run, you don't see what is the output. But if I'm going here and copy exactly the same command, I'm not expecting to see data underscore file, but I'm expecting to see data underscore file underscore 100. And when you run it, you see that file is no longer here, but the new file, it was renamed actually under this file. So it's very important to remember this function. You can rename any file or any folders excuse me. Any folder, any file or folder into the older name to the new name, the source and the destination. Okay. So now if we want to try to copy it back or rename it back into something different here, which says I want to try to take it from 100 to the original file name. And you, again, there is no output here, but as you see, when I try to run this command, you see there's no more 100, data underscore file underscore 100, but I have data underscore file dot txt. So that's how I can rename a file with Python without getting into the command line or doing any manual work. This is the super important thing here. There is no much manual work. All right, I think would be a good idea to stop here for about 10 minutes. So it's now, let's reconnect again in about 10 minutes. I will start reviewing the questions and probably see what questions can be answered after the break. All right, thank you. All right, so let's continue here. Uh, this might be the reason I see a question os.uname does not work in Windows. Honestly, I have no way to see why it doesn't work in Windows because I don't have Windows machine here. Okay, so let's continue with other modules. Sorry, how we can basically once we have the OS or any other module is imported. Sometimes I would like to, if you try to import it one more time, it will ignore it, which means if I do OS, import OS, and when I do import one more time OS, that's actually the second time it will be ignored because it runs and the import is done only one time. So there's no much point. It's going to be kind of skipped the second time. So, for static modules, that doesn't make a lot of difference here. But in case if you are working on your module that you built yourself, and you are working on it, and every time you need to make some changes, then most likely you are interested to re-importing the module. For that, there is another module that can make sure the module is reloaded. It's called import lib. So you could do import lib, import lib. That's a module, and you could say import OS. That's for the first time, and the second time you could do import lib dot reload, and with the reload you could do OS again. And in this case, it's actually makes sure that the OS is imported again. So you could run it several times and you see what you get without the reloading of the import function. As you see, it's just doing nothing because you have already OS. As I mentioned, for modules that are created by by the system, that doesn't make a lot of sense to reload the modules. But if you build a module yourself, then it does make sense. So let's try to do basically but the other question I would like to probably get, what if I'm not interested in the OS module? So if I do here as an example, get current working directory, and that gets you that, right? So now if I'm trying to, delete the module, not deleting it from the system, but it's kind of unimporting, look what happens here. It says OS not defined. So DEL, OS, or any other module that wouldn't delete it from the memory, from your system, is just doing unimporting to the module here. Again, if I comment this out, and I need to import the module OS and run this one again, I still get what I have. But if I need to unimport that module, you just do DEL OS. As another example, I can probably import a couple other modules, like some of you probably heard about the pandas module. I could do import pandas, and then I can create kind of a data frame if you like, but this is probably a bit advanced for this class. I could do pandas and then data frame, which is one of the functions I can create here. And then I could say display dd1, and then I can do print just a couple lines, empty line, and here I could do del pandas, and then I could do exactly the same thing, but as dd2, and then most likely it's going to crash here. So it's, as you see, the first time I'm creating dd1 to be an empty something called data frame. Then there's a line, it prints here. Once you delete the pandas, and when I'm repeating the same line, line number two, it crashes, it says pandas is not defined. So the conclusion from this, if you are interested in any module, if you do import OS, that's how you import it. If you want to get rid of it, you just do del. And of course, you just import it and import it, and that's it. Okay. Here in the next thing, what I would like to do is probably trying to create some word counts. For this exercise, let's start with a text like that. Text equals you miss 100% of shots you don't take. Okay, given the fact that there are some apostrophes here, you can use three quotes, triple quotes, and you could take. So the conclusion, this is quite a famous saying, and then I'm saying keep trying, or you could say keep trying, keep trying. So this is the text I have, and the question is, how can I get the total number of each word? How many times each word in this text appears? There are at least a couple of approaches to solve this problem, but one of them is using one of the function called counter from one of the modules. So you can go from the module and pick something. I could say there's a module called collections, and from that collections, I can, import the function called counter, and then I say, what can I do? I can do text, then I could do, I want to split this function dot lower, and then split. So that gets me, I'm taking that string and I'm splitting it into a list. And once I have that list, I could do a counter on this splitted string. And as you could see, the word you appears twice, miss is one, and 100% is one, off one, the one, shots one, don't one, and so on. Keep is 4 and trying 2. So that returns actually a dictionary, as you could see, that the key would be the word and the number of frequency for each word it appears as the value in here. Let me see if there are any questions about this, and we'll take it from there. See, okay, I got that. So I'm trying to see QA. Okay. The difference between from collection import and just import. Yes, absolutely. A question that comes from, well, there are a couple of questions. Let's start from Hector. In what cases I would like to delete a module I imported? Well, sometimes if the module is too large and you are trying to free some of the memory, you can delete or unimport the library or the module. So what's the main reason for delete from memory? No, you are not deleting from the memory. You are just deleting it from well, you are not deleting from the system. The system will continue to have the same thing, the same modules, but you can just unload it from the system. For example, if you which takes a lot of memory, you can probably just get rid of it and import it. Is there a difference between from collection import and counter and just import counter? If I do import counter, that wouldn't work because there is no such a module. But you could do two things. You could do import counter collections like that, and from the collections you could do collections dot counter, and that gets you exactly the same thing. As you see, I can get this. There is I can, that gets you exactly the same, no problem. However, now rather than importing the entire module, which is the entire library, you can import specific functions from that specific module. And all I'm saying, in this case, you are importing the entire module. So there are multiple ways to import. You could do from collections, import everything. That's how you import everything from that module. Or the best way to do it, you could do from collections, import counter. So in this case, this is the most efficient way to import things in memory-wise. This one, you are importing everything from the collections, and the first case here, line number 1, is basically you are importing the entire module. So if you choose to do the first one, then you need to say, okay, collections, and inside the collections you are calling that function that comes from the collections, and then you feed the input here to get what would be the output. I hope this is answering your question, Thomas. Is there a way to arrange the word in order? Yes, absolutely. Yes, you can. And this is exactly what we covered last time. When we dealt with the dictionaries, you can sort a dictionary by the values or by the keys. So for example, if you want to try to say this is the dictionary, and let's say this is a D is for dictionary, and you could do, I have D here, that, well, you could do dictionary of D, that gets you exactly the dictionary. You could say D equal that, and once you could do for key and value, you could actually get the sorted, and then the D, and you could do key equals D dot get, and that gets you basically what you have, and for key and value in sorted, that gets you basically print key and the value. So hold a second. For key, items. Okay, so I sorted. I need just to look at that. I will answer this question probably later on. Yes, but the answer is yes, absolutely yes. I will get back to you in towards probably the end of the screen of the session. Okay, so and from collections import is the same like import collections. Basically, yes. Thomas, this is again this question to you. The answer is basically to answer your question here. From collections import everything. It's basically you want to try, rather than doing collections dot something, you do directly to the function from the collections. So it's basically importing collections. If you do import collections, then you need to write, still writing collections dot something. Um, what's the difference between import collections and from collections import? That's pretty much the same. So all I'm saying, import collections, I still need to refer to any specific function inside the import here. When I'm saying from collections import everything. So if I get this and try to get into this answer like that, and then I know that the counter is a separate. You can call the counter directly, and you could do exactly the same I have in here, and that, and that's what you get as a result. So this one or this one work the same way. But remember, I basically imported everything from collections, so every function will be as a separate standalone function. Okay, so let's go back and try to see what do we get in here. Um, uh, so the last thing, sure. I think I'm still thinking about the dictionary, how it can be sorted. So when you do D, that's you get that. But if you could do for key in sorted, and then that's D, and then the key would be D dot get, and then you could do print the key, and basically you could do D of K, and that gets you exactly. So you see it's 1, 1, 1, 1, it comes to 2 and 4. And if you want this to be in a different order, reverse equal true, and that gets you the most frequent words come in the top, and then the less frequent frequent words, and until the least frequent words. Why does .get method not have parentheses here? Okay, so because this is kind of if you get that, that would get you an error message. I know this is not the right answer, but all I'm saying, this is kind of functional programming where you say, okay, that's how you want to get the information. So feel free on this, Rob, and you will come up with that's the type of function, not necessarily the function of itself, itself. Okay, let's go try to. So far, we used the counter in order to get the result of the word count from the text. But we don't need to do that. We could do a couple things here, and let me try to save this and try to build it myself. So I have text. So the text is that. So that's the text, and I could say, first of all, I can split the words into text.split, and that's it. So if I do L, that gets me all the words. Now we could do D as dictionary, empty dictionary, which I'm basically trying to build it myself rather than calling the counter here, which is an exercise how we can use and leverage dictionaries in Python. So you could do for word in L. So I'm saying D of word equals D dot get word 0 if it doesn't exist, plus 1. So what does that tell me? So I'm saying try to get the value of the word from the dictionary. If the word does not exist in the dictionary, then get the value 0, and then you add 1. If the word is already in the dictionary, ignores the 0, and increment it by 1. And finally, you just get me the D. And that's exactly the same. And again, if I want, so if I do print here, that's a print of that file. And if you do for key and sorted, and you do D and the key equals D dot get, and here again, reverse equals true, and you could do print the key and the D of key. That gets you pretty much the entire thing. That's the text. That's a first print statement. That's a print for the D, as you can see it here. And that's a print statement of the dictionary sorted from the most frequent words to the least frequent words. Okay. Here, what can be done also is you could say, let me see. I'm just trying to see if there are other questions. There are no other questions. I can probably look for, a form. So let's try to text. I just want to get the text. So basically, how I can get the text, I'm just trying to add this one. I just need the text. Yeah. So imagine I have, oops, sorry, that's not what I want. Yeah, I want to try to get this text here and try, that should be enough. So I'm taking this text. Just one moment, please. I'm just trying to move it around. So song, let's call it song like that. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, and that's the song, basically. It's not the same, the entire song, if you are familiar with the song. And let's try to do some other stuff here. And I want to try to find each word, how many times it appears. Same thing here. We could do song, words, if you like, words equals song, song like this, and then split. And then you do the dictionary, D equals, that's a dictionary. And then you could do for word in words. And then you do D of word, one more exercise. It's D dot get the word. I just set it as 0. It doesn't exist, +1. And then that's it, basically. And you could do, if you want to try to see what's the most frequent words, you could do for key, for the key, which is the word, if you like, for word in and then get, and reverse equals true, and you could do print the word and D of the word. And that gets you, of course, it's not surprising. A is appearing 17 times, which is the most frequent thing. Then had is a 9, E-I-E-I-O, 9, old 6, McDonald's 6, farm 6, moo moo here 4, and so on. So you see, this is pretty much what you have. And if you want to try to find what are the top 5 most frequent words, you could do the following. You could see counter equals 0, and then you say if counter less than 5, and that, and here you could do counter equals counter +1, and which is the same. This is equivalent to counter plus equal 1. It's exactly the same. And that's it. So it looks like I had counter, um, and that's what you see, 2, 4, 5 words appearing here, as you see. Nothing else. That's the most frequent 5 words. If you want the top 9 words, that's 9 words. The most frequent 9 words, and so on. And you can add, as many things as you want. Probably some, or some other stuff here. You can continue anything. This can apply to, not necessarily this exercise, but it can apply to many other exercises. Okay. Okay, so I have about 10 minutes or less than 10 minutes to finish the second session. But here is another exercise I would like to try. So you could try to copy. One of the questions is, if you are trying to import a module, or how can you import a module that is not sitting in the same folder? So you are building a module. Just think about it as, let me start, have another share here, a new share. Let me try to do this, and I'm saying it's a new share here. That's my command line. So if I do pico, and those who are familiar with the command line, they can follow up with this. So let's say circle dot py, and here I'm saying, just think about it as pi to be 3.14, very inaccurate, but let's say that's the case. And then I'm defining a function here, which is area, which is get me the R, I will get you return, and then return, then pi times R squared. So that's how you get that. And that's it. So I'm saving this file. And I'm saving this file, Control X, yes, that's it. And as you see, there is such a module which is called circle.py. So if we want to try to run that, Python, and then circle, well, it doesn't tell me anything here. You could probably do Python 3, Python 3. Let's see, what do I get? Oh, hold a second. What I'm trying to explain here is something different. Python 3, interesting. But maybe I changed something into my setting here. So if I try to say import circle, as you see, I'm able to do it from, oh, I need to have a new share here. So that's how I imported that module. So if I do circle, yeah, dot area, and I'm saying it's just 3, that gets you the area of the circle that I created into that module. So one more time. So if I say I want to try to get into this module, pico circle, and that, so you see, this is just a definition of the pi, and then this function is what is the area of that circle, and then I'm saying, give me that that file, and from the command line, I can say, get me how I can import that module. So this is import circle. And I'm saying, if I say, what's the area of, let's say, 10, that should be 314, because 10 squared is 100. 100 times 3.14 gets me the 10 times 100 times 3.14, it's 314, and so on. Now, the interesting thing here, that the circle, it's in the same folder where session 2 is. But what if I want to move I want to move, let me do another share here. So I can move circle into my downloads. So downloads folder. So the circle is not here anymore, is not in the same folder anymore. So in this case, if I do one, let me share again. So if I do del stands for delete. If I do del circle, that's, and try to import it again. Let me see. That should not be the case. So now if I do del import, oops, sorry, that's what I meant. Import and then circle. That should, if the question is actually, I need to figure it out why it still shows it's possible. But it should not be possible because the circle is not in that folder. But all I'm saying, in this case, I need to do, using the path, I can do import sys. And from the import sys, you could do sys dot path, and then you could do add. Let me see how I can try to find the right syntax. You could do add, and then you could add. That is, you want to add it as the first thing, the first location, path dot insert, and then you could do, um, do download. That's downloads. And now with that, you could import the circles, import circle, and now this would work as well. And you could do circle dot area, and let's say it's 2. That gets you exactly the message. Or alternatively, you could do from circle import area, like that. That should still work. And you could do even area this time as of 6. That's the area of 6 coming from the other ways. So the conclusion here is the following. If the file or the module is not sitting in the same folder, you could use the module called sys in order to add the location of that module. Then you will be able to import it. That's one thing that I wanted to emphasize in the last exercise. The other thing, once you find that module, you could import it as the whole module. Well, in this case, it's only one function. It's not that of a big deal, but you could also do from circle import area, and then call area directly without saying it's import dot area. Let me stop sharing here. Probably there are some other questions. You could, yeah, SJ, you could say it's an IPython, how to list all methods. Oh yeah, sure. That's a good question, Jay. So if you are interested in all the questions, all the functions in a specific model, let's take OS as an example. Well, OS here was not imported because I deleted. You could do OS, and that gets you dir. It gets you all the functions that available in a specific model. You could also get the help function, help like that, and that gets you basically the entire the manual for that specific module. You could see a lot of information you can see from that module. How soon will this be available to review? Okay, we'll talk about that with the management here in Magnimind. Do I need to import a library to use int function? No, this comes actually bundled with the standard Python. So I think if I do Python, well, I think I did something here which is not. I did some changes in my system, so I appreciate your suggestion, SJ. With IPython, still not what I wanted to see. I appreciate your feedback. Um, could you send this notebook afterwards? Okay. Well, as I said, I mean, we are talking with Magnimind. Most likely we will share some of the notes, but please remember the notes are not clean. So you need to make sure that you understand it's not the perfect clean version of the notes, but we'll talk about it with the management in Magnimind. Okay, some other questions. Will you make video? Oh, well, I'm not talking about videos. I'm talking about the notes. Okay. If there are no other questions, I think I will stop sharing here, and I just want to share. So let me see. So. All right. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you. We'll see you next week. Please stay healthy and safe. All right. Bye bye.